You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there. Welcome to this special episode. I'm so grateful that you chose this one. Today I am having a different kind of conversation with someone very dear to me about a topic that is close to my heart and one that we don't often hear about. I felt called to give this a voice. When I asked my friend Anna Jane if she would be willing to come here and share her perspective with the world, she was all in. Maybe she was feeling called as well. I like to look at this experience as an example of listening to the nudge of intuition, letting your heart guide you instead of your head. Because yes, I had some ever so fleeting thoughts about how this topic aligns with the subject matter that I normally bring here. Then I quickly reminded myself that said subject matter involves all of the humans and their experiences in this life. On this podcast, my wonderful guests and I talk about the darkness and the light, the lows as well as the highs, the roads that we have traveled, the ones that we are on, and the places we'd like to go. We talk about being broken down and lifting ourselves up. We talk about reflecting on our past and the lessons we have learned, lessons that may not have come to light if our lives had been easier. We talk about all of the things. And this topic is so important to me because, as many of you may know, I am an adoptive parent. And as an adoptive parent, I will forever hold the highest place of honor and the deepest love for the birth mother who carried our child and gave us the greatest gift possible. My sweet friend Anna Jane is, like me, a seeker. And the name we're going with today is really a pseudonym that we made up a couple of minutes before we started recording our conversation. Anna is a local friend of mine, and we met a few years ago when I responded to social posts of hers. She was seeking. And we set up that first in-person meeting, and the rest is history. Anna is a good 20 years younger than I am, but that doesn't mean one bit in our relationship. I rarely think about that. She feels like a peer to me. We have this soul-level connection. Actually, she feels more like a sister. It is very easy for us to have conversations for hours and lose track of time when we get together. And Anna's adoption story is a bit unique in terms of how she chose the family to parent her baby. She'll share all of that here. I just want you to be prepared for some real and raw talk around a sensitive topic. What Anna wants is for other birth moms out there in this world to know that they are seen and loved. Adoption is a choice for a lifetime. There are ebbs and flows of emotions related to that choice for a lifetime. We are here for you today. Let's get to it. Welcome, my sweet friend Anna, to the podcast. Hey, what lights you up, girl?
I would have to say it would be my special interests. One of them is, painting or just finding any kind of crafts or art. I always fall into something and then quickly change it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and you know what? That's a beautiful thing, that just whatever you might have in the moment it's great. It doesn't have to stay the same all the time. So It's so good. I asked you here today because our relationship began with you posting something on Facebook looking for a connection with other birth mothers. And I remember responding to that in a way of like, well, I'm not a birth mother, but I'm an adoptive mother, and I really want to get to know you. And we have since just really nurtured this relationship that we have. I love it. I love knowing your story. And can you share that with the audience today, what your story is as a birth mom?
Well, it started, I was in my early 20s and not too long ago.
Yeah.
And I was in an abusive relationship and I found out I was pregnant. And so I had to make a choice as to what to do. And with all the choices that were presented to me, um, which one of them was my aunt who was struggling to get pregnant, and who for a very, very, very long time wanted to have a baby. And so I thought, okay, I have this gift. So I contacted her and I asked her if this is something she wanted to do. And she said, my gosh, this answered our prayers. Only like a couple hours ago, I was talking to people about, does anybody know anyone? Because adoption is a very long process.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just all fell into place that way. And it was a pretty long journey. There is very bumpy road, especially being in an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved because of it to be closer to my family. And then I gave birth, and she took her home from the hospital. And now we have been on this really amazing journey together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you live locally to your aunt. So you are able to see your daughter frequently, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean it's such an amazing story, your journey. And I know there's so much more to it that is just high level, which is enough because I really want to dig deeper into kind of where you are now with that. But I just love that because as an adoptive mom, I will say this, the agency that we went through had a required reading. And I don't recall if I've ever told you this, this many, coffee dates and lunch dates and things that we've had over the past couple of years. I don't recall if I told you this, but a required reading for me, for us in going through the adoption process on the other side of it, if you will, was called something called the third choice. And it is like adoption is the third choice. So I just want to say this. I'm sure I've told you this before, but mad respect to every birth mother out there who has made the most difficult choice to give birth and place your child with another in the care of other humans other than yourself. And I think it is the most beautiful thing. And let's talk about terminology too. I want to be very clear because a lot of times you will hear people say, well, like give up for adoption. And it's not giving up. It is
It's
not giving up.
placing.
It's placing.
Mm-hmm.
You use the term placing because you are literally taking another human and placing them in the care of someone else. And in your case, it is your beloved aunt. So that's an amazing thing. That's an
Yes.
amazing, amazing thing. And I just want to give you a shout out to your strength and resolve in seeing that through because I know it was not an easy choice to make.
Thank you. Yes, it was it was very hard choice, but um, I don't have any regret at
Mm-hmm.
all about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges like frequently, more frequently than I expected.
Yeah. 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 What is it like to actually be in the life of this child now? What is that
Um,
like?
it's a beautiful thing, for the most part. I mean, watching her grow, seeing her milestones. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I'm there for something, like especially like birthdays and Christmases, and also getting updates frequently when, my life gets really busy and my aunt's life gets really busy, and we try our best to stay as connected as possible, but sometimes life just doesn't allow for that.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's other sides to it that are kind of difficult, just exploring this entirely new family dynamic. um, Me being very careful of my aunt's feelings, my aunt being careful of my feelings, us both being careful for our daughter's feelings, um, and just trying to find the right way to communicate. And that can get really, really tricky, on all ends.
Sure. Sure. I mean, I imagine it is a delicate dance
Hmm.
on everyone's part, on both mothers' parts for sure. The child, not so much at this age, but
Yeah.
um, later it may be, some things. And as you know, I'm an adoptive mother, and the thing that I have is that our son knows, he's always known he's adopted, and it is just a thing. It's like, okay, I have blue eyes and I'm adopted. It's
Hmm.
just a thing to him. And, he is now 12. So, I mean, it's just, I think it's probably the most healthy thing that we can do at this point and in this particular time, because there were definitely times in the past where birth mothers would just disappear for a period of time, and after they gave birth they would return to life. They wouldn't, nobody knew anything, and all of that. And the thing,
Sometimes records were even sealed, and the birth
yeah,
mother didn't have a choice in the
yeah,
matter.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, now we have DNA kits readily available to anyone and everyone. So it's not exactly something that you can keep a secret anymore. You
That's
used to be
big.
able, yeah, you used to be able to do that back in the day. Can't do that anymore. I know people who have made it into their 50s and then find out,
Oh, yeah.
and
Well, with
that's,
that, me and
yeah.
my dad did 23andMe, and there was so my dad's actual father is out of the picture, and my current grandfather signed my dad's birth certificate because he came into the picture before my dad was born.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a huge conflict of like trying to get a hold of his birth father for mostly just medical records. And they did do a DNA test between him and his brother. They connected somehow, and it was kept a secret. But I just did my 23andMe, and so did my dad, and we hooked up to each other on 23andMe.
Mm-hmm.
And then that whole family also did 23andMe, and we all connected. So even though, my dad, got the confirmation he needed and the medical stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it would have happened anyways as soon as me and my dad did 23andMe, because it was just like, it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's just there. And one thing that I want to talk about, because we had this conversation over lunch recently, in that of this kind of how to move forward from where you've been to where you want to go. Because there is this thing that you want to be a mom to another child. You want to do that. And what is holding you back now from doing that?
Well, I mean, to start, I just wanted to say, in case there's a birth mother listening at all, is you obviously expect the pain that you go through immediately when it happens.
Hmm.
And you're expecting that, and it doesn't make it any easier, but you're expecting it. And the things that weren't expecting were the big life events to happen in the future
Yeah.
to cause pain. And one of them was, I recently, and it was on accident, but um, I got pregnant, and I had decided, I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it happen. And just remembering my past pregnancy and imagining this whole new pregnancy and this whole new life and my turn to be a mother and raise my kid, and everything that I have been through, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
And it pretty much was abruptly, like within a couple weeks after finding out, ripped away because I had a miscarriage.
Hmm.
And immediately after the miscarriage, it was this, I have to deal with the miscarriage and then all these other feelings that I didn't have really time to deal with because I was trying to build my life, because no one does an adoption because their life is easy. um,
Right.
and so and so then all of a sudden feelings or wounds from the adoption were opened up, and then these miscarriage feelings came in, and it was like I was grieving two children at once,
Mm.
and that was really hard. And then this need to want, like, I've wanting to try again, but I mean, honestly, I'm still not there yet. We're not quite exactly where I want to be. I mean, I was going to try to make it happen and work really hard and make it happen, but now I'm like, okay, you know what, I have a little more time. I want to work, I want to fix some things in my life a little bit more and then try again soon.
Hmm.
But that's also just a struggle, being like, oh my gosh, it was right there. And now I'm
Hmm.
trying to make the right decision. And so it's just, yeah, like I wasn't expecting other things to happen into my life that were going to be more challenging because of the adoption. I didn't expect a miscarriage to hit because I never had one before.
Hmm.
And I didn't expect for all these really hard feelings to come up. And I also didn't expect for my family dynamic to change either. So there's just been a lot of struggles that I wasn't expecting. Still no regrets, but it's not easy.
Right. Right. You know, it never is. I've been very open about my losses, and it wasn't a spontaneous miscarriage, but I had two tubal pregnancies, and so they required medical intervention each time,
Mhm.
and so there is that, yes, a level of grief, and I mean, I'm deep grief for me, and for you, I just wonder, grief is such a very intensely personal experience. It is different for each one of us, of course. But I think that you conveyed in a way to me recently that you, in not so many words, didn't feel entitled to grieve as much as someone else. Is that true? Is that
Mm,
somewhat accurate?
yeah, I guess. I think that more comes from like outward things, like you can't grieve the adoption because your baby's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
on that end, the miscarriage people were a little bit more, okay, yeah, that's hard. But when I say, like, I said, okay, this is the second time I'm going through this. This is rough. Like, this is rough to have two losses, and it's just harder for other people to understand. Like, I made the choice to adopt, and my child's alive, and I have a relationship with her.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a loss because she's living.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But is that true? Is that true that it's not a loss because she's living? I
Well,
mean, it
and
still is.
I've read articles, and I can agree to the articles to what they said, which is basically like it's a different grief than like death,
Yeah.
which when someone dies, it's finalized. You
Hmm.
grieve, but it's a final thing.
Hmm.
Um, with being an adoptive mother, it's not like it's actually worse because they're still alive. They have this whole, and I'm not speaking for every birth mother, but
Right.
it's a common feeling. They're still living on, they're growing, they're hitting milestones. This whole life that could have been is not there anymore.
Hmm.
And it makes birthday, Christmas, every holiday that is important to whoever you are hard. Um and it's a constant reminder, and it's weird because it's beautiful at the same time. Like, it's just this amazing thing. This person is out there that, like, for me, my child is having the childhood I never got to have, and it's just wonderful. But at the same time, like, it hits, and it hits hard, and so it's just this never ending grief. Like, it's like, just it comes up again and again, and especially when things happen in my own personal life. uh Having a miscarriage, and then things are probably going to come up in the future. I've talked to other birth mothers, and they're like, yeah, I watch my current children playing in the yard, and I feel like there's a child missing,
Mm.
while I watch my children play in the yard. And then that's another thing, is like the relationship. Hey, your sister was adopted out, and then her, oh, hey, your brother or sister I have with me now. And so it's just complicated, and it affects your life for the rest of your life. And so it's just this weird, like, beautiful, hard thing. So
It's both beautiful and devastating simultaneously.
mhm.
That is what I was thinking as you were kind of, expressing what your thoughts are around the matter at any given time, and you can't control when the those moments come up for you, but both beautiful and devastating simultaneously, which is, oh, it's such a kick in the ass because um, we think that everything is black and white, that it's this or that it's right or wrong. And, we've just come to see the world in that way. And it isn't always that simple, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's just such a simplistic view of things. Is it right or wrong, good or bad, left or right, dark or light, all of those things? And there's so much in between and so many nuances. And especially when it comes to being a birth mom, um, doing adoption, getting into that fray, and having an ongoing relationship with this child too. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the thing. Do you think that it is, in some ways, do you think it would be easier if you had chosen a stranger?
um
Have you thought about that? I'm sure you have, right? You've thought about that.
Yeah, more. I well, the thing is that's hard because when I had given birth to her, I was sitting in that hospital room, and especially because I've had my own childhood trauma too, so that plays into it a little bit.
Hmm.
Is just sitting here and thinking, if this was a stranger, like, I couldn't let her go. I would
Hmm.
keep her, and I would make it happen because moms are strong and they can make anything happen.
Hmm.
But because my aunt had been waiting so long for this event to happen in her life, and also she had gone to therapy and done a lot of heavy lifting in her life, and was emotionally at that point where she was ready to have a kid, and I know that she would fiercely protect my daughter, then I was like, yes, this is the right decision. So it depends on what moment you ask me. Like in that moment, there's no way in heck I'd give it to a stranger or give her to a stranger, because if I sign away my parental rights and something happens, I could never forgive myself.
Mm,
Um, but then, when it comes down to my family, um, like it makes relationships with my family harder. So yeah, like in that sense, it would be easier if it was a stranger because it wouldn't affect my personal family.
mhm,
But yeah, I mean, that moment in the hospital, there's no way in heck I would give her to somebody I didn't know. I That's a personal decision. Every birth mother is different, but I don't think I would have had the strength for that.
mm, mm. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's such a, I mean, to me, it is a unique story. You're not the first and definitely won't be the last um, who has placed her child with a family member legally to be raised and all of that. But it just is so, I love your strength in being able to still be a part of her life as you are,
Mhm.
right? As you are. So I want to come back to, I wasn't sure if you wanted to share the miscarriage. So thank you for bringing the strength to that part of your story as well. What, when you go through something like that, I think it just really highlights and underscores the things that are missing, right? You
Mhm.
have your daughter in your life in some capacity. However, you are not raising her. And having a miscarriage like that just is a reminder of what could be,
Mhm.
right? And you want to have children that you raise, right?
Yes.
How do you do you have to reconcile that? Do you have to, I mean, tell me about what you go through when you think about having a child of you, that you are raising.
It's hard because there's that fear that lives inside me of um it was kind of like a little bit lingering there, like, oh my gosh, after a miscarriage, which I never expected. I mean, I know they're common, but never had one before, had a full healthy pregnancy, just
Mhm.
wasn't expecting something like that to happen. I don't know. And then thinking, oh my gosh, what if I gave up my only chance? And then I'm like, okay, you know what,
Mm,
that's a little intense. Like, it's okay, I'm still young, like, it's going to be okay. And then posting to talk to other birth mothers in a birth mother Facebook group. And then, like, a few of them were like, oh, yeah, I was never able to have children again. Good luck
mm,
to you. I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
uh,
Like, I never thought of that possibility. That never popped in my head. I was just so set on giving the best life to my daughter
yeah.
and helping my aunt out that I never thought so far ahead that, like, there could be a chance that anything could happen to me, anything,
Mhm.
to change my fertility.
Mhm.
And so the miscarriage made that reality, like, very, like, it put it right in front of me that could be something that could happen. And that's been really hard to focus and think on, like, or I'm trying not to focus on it, but so then just like it's almost this mental block of not imagining my future children, especially because I did that during my pregnancy. Well, the short 2 weeks I knew I was pregnant.
Mhm.
um, and so it's hard to imagine my future with my children, because it's like I don't want to break my heart again if something happens and I actually can't do that.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that is so hard. It is so difficult to come to terms with and allow yourself to open up again, open yourself up to the possibilities again when you have been devastated by miscarriage or by, by that. It just is, and again, just like just like grief, just like any level of grief, giving yourself some time to work through that, and a whole lot of compassion, and not thinking that that was your only chance, because you are still young.
Mhm.
You are. You're not, I mean, what are you, 27?
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, 27 years old. I mean, and I get it. I so get it, because when I was that age, I walked around and I thought, well, I should be a mom by now. I expected that I would be, by now, and by then. And it was a good, probably another 8 years or so um, before I had my opportunity to do
Mhm.
that. So, I mean, mid 30s. So but we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially as women. We put so much pressure on ourselves to have these things by this time, by this age, and it's so unnecessary, don't you think?
I mean, yeah, I think it goes case by case from person to person. For me, uh, it it gets to like I think that I'm like, yes, like in my 30s that'll be okay. Like I'm not rushed in that sense.
Mhm.
I think there's two things that make me feel rushed is maybe just the pain of two losses, and it's just like I just want it to be my turn.
Mhm.
And then an even bigger one is, when I was a teenager, I was diagnosed with pre-arthritis in my knees.
Mhm.
I have nerve pain in my back. And then into my early 20s, I got carpal tunnel. And even though I was in my early 20s pregnant, like it was an easy pregnancy because I was young, but it wasn't easy because of what I had going on physically.
Mhm.
And so it just worries me about going through another pregnancy when these problems that I have are going to eventually get worse with age, even if I do take care. And then on top of that, like I want to run around in the yard with my kids. So everybody's different where their physical abilities are, but I do get concerned with time ticking by my physical abilities.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I want to also, just for the audience's awareness, your miscarriage has been very, very recent, like
3 months ago.
3 months ago. That's
Hmm.
very, very recent. So I want to express my gratitude for you sharing that with everyone. That is what you're going through. It is still raw. It is still new. It is still all of these things. So, such a beautiful thing, again, that beauty and devastation simultaneously. Um, that you sharing that now is amazing. Thank you for that.
Of course.
I I guess just coming back to that idea of that pressure, and I get it. I get it's like I didn't plan for this. I, I found myself pregnant, and I just imagined all of the possibilities, and then it was taken away from me, and then that just opens up a whole um, a whole avalanche of grief, whatever that is for you, but it is whatever that is, right? You're just feeling all of the things. You're feeling this loss. You're reminded of this other loss, because yes, it is a loss to be a birth mother. I get that it is. I
Hmm.
don't, I will never fully understand it, but I will always honor um, the decision and the the all of the things that come along with that for the rest of your life
I
in that
appreciate that.
in
Like,
that
I really
decision.
do. I'm sorry. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that because it's just, man, I going into it, everyone's like, this is going to be hard. This is going to be hard. Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah.
And I just sat there and I was like, I know this is going to be hard. Of course, this is not a thing that's going to be easy. Like, of course. But until you do it,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, unless you have a baby, or, unless, I guess the better way to say is unless you like or become a parent, you don't understand what it's like to be a parent. So
Mm.
it's like when you become a birth mother, it's unimaginable unless you go through it.
Hmm.
So I appreciate, the even if, you know someone can't fully connect, I appreciate you, being like, I honor this, because a lot of people can't wrap their heads around it, which I understand because I didn't even fully wrap my head around it before.
Hmm.
There's some people like, oh, are you going to get your daughter back eventually? Or,
Oh,
they
wow.
just, yeah, they just like can't wrap their heads around like the finalization of it, and how could a mother do something like this? Like, how could she? Like, that doesn't make sense. And it's just, unless you're there, it's
Yeah.
not going to.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so very much for sharing that, because you are exactly right. Unless you're there, it's the whole walk a mile in my shoes thing. It may be an overused expression, but it's so very true. It is so very true. You have no idea. So the absolute strength in, first of all, making that decision, and then secondly, being able to continue to carry on this relationship that you have is absolutely amazing. It's just yeah, it's huge. And I don't even know what it was, but I was drawn to you from do you remember that first coffee date we had? Oh my gosh. I just drove by that place last week and I thought of you. I was like, oh, there's the Starbucks. you know,
We hit it off. I
I
wasn't
know.
expecting that, especially because we came from complete opposite sides of a
Right,
situation.
right.
I mean, not that we wouldn't connect, but the level, even in the way that we talked about things, and the
Hmm.
fact that I could be so comfortable and so open with you and feel immediately safe, which is hard to find.
Mm.
And especially, I mean, because I met you really soon after it had happened.
Yeah.
And it was such a blessing to have you come around in my life during that time, because I was so vulnerable and going through so much. And then
Mm.
on top of that, just having insight on what it means to be an adoptive mother, helped me, because I try so hard to be as compassionate as I possibly can towards, my aunt, because
Hmm.
she's wonderful. Not only has she changed my daughter's life, but she's completely changed my life. And
Yeah.
so just to have the opportunity to, because she's not going to be able to fully express everything to me. I mean, I hope she could, but there's barriers. And so to be able to hear some things from you too, and
Hmm.
your experience, really helps broaden things I'm going through.
Oh, oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, my heart. It's so funny. I mean, I'm old enough to be your mother. I really am. It's so funny. But I love that. I love our relationship. I love that, yeah, that we can be so open and honest and just real with one another. And I think that the more the more of us that can do that, that can make those kind of connections, the better off our whole world is going to be. I mean, it just is. It's like, but I always feel like, you hear me say this a lot, everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. It's like, me seeing that post on Facebook, I don't even remember what group you posted it in, but it was not something that it wasn't like a group that I frequent. It's just like it showed up in my feed. You didn't have a lot of reaction to it that I recall. And it was just like, I want to respond to her. I just do. I felt so compelled to respond to you in that moment. And, a couple of days later, we're meeting up at Starbucks and the rest is history. I mean,
No, and I appreciate that because there's really unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of support for birth mothers.
yeah.
And then on top of that, every birth mother has such an intensely unique situation. And
Hmm.
then even from like age groups, like
Hmm.
the birth mother groups that did exist, where I could physically go, they told me, they were like, these are women who are looking for their children soon, and their children are full grown adults, or they're looking for their children and their children are full grown adults.
Oh,
And like, there's not this, like, we would love to have you, but I don't think that this is the space for you because
wow.
mine's a kinship adoption. It just happened. And it's been hard to find a space to have that. And I posted it on a local group because I was like, maybe somebody knows something
Yeah.
somewhere, because the resources, I mean, whenever I look, even on Google, if I look up trying to find resources as a birth parent, if you're not very careful about the way that you word things in your Google searches, there are tons and tons and tons of resources for parents who are adopting,
Mm,
for the child who's been adopted, which beautiful. Yes, I love that. But it's a
yeah.
little bit heartbreaking because it's so limited for the birth parents themselves. And
Wow.
it's like, as many people as are adopted, that means there as many birth parents exist, but we
Hmm.
don't have enough resources. So, it's just I'm so happy you were drawn to my post because I didn't have a whole lot of I have friends and family who love me. I have my therapist, but I mean that's as far as the support went. So it was just good to have a friend
Hmm.
there, and a friend who understands it on some capacity.
On some capacity. And, it's so interesting that I'm still not what you were looking for.
But it was good still.
No, I know it's been great, but I'm still not what you were looking for. And I thank you for sharing that because it's like, hello, yeah, where are the resources for birth parents?
Mhm.
You know, and parents. I mean, men probably need some level of support too if they would just own it and admit that they, admit that.
I'm seeing a lot more men in therapy lately, so I love it. We love a king in therapy.
Oh, good. That's fantastic. Good. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is such a beautiful conversation. I absolutely love it. It just is it is like wrapping my heart in warmth to have this conversation, to have this real and raw honesty around what this experience is like on the other side, as you say.
And I appreciate it too. Thank you for having me on here, because especially since this is so vulnerable, a lot of
Hmm.
birth mothers may not feel comfortable having their story out. But if I get my story out, I talk to my friends and family, but I feel like this moment has been very healing in the sense that maybe there is one um, you know birth parent going through some of the things I'm going through. And if they feel a little less alone, then me sharing my story was worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and that is where it is at because I just remember asking you at the time when we last had lunch together, and you were just kind of sharing all of these things, and I thought, oh my gosh, would you be willing to talk about this publicly? So your willingness to be vulnerable and real in this space is absolutely amazing. And as you said, if it helps one other birth parent, one birth mother, one other human out there, then yes, it's worth it. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And maybe some other people who are interested in how adoption is for the birth parent, maybe that'll help them have some insight too, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever helps anybody, and like I felt so alone for a long time during the process. So if there was a rad podcast where someone was being vulnerable, that would have been such a great thing in my time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I know. I say I know because it's like I would have consumed all of the podcasts myself, back in the day if they existed at the time when
Mhm.
I was going through the adoption process. I absolutely would have absorbed as much as I possibly could. So knowing what your experience has been and you sharing that experience has been absolutely the most amazing thing. Now, at this point, as we wrap up this conversation, and we could go on and on,
Yeah.
we could totally go on and on, but I'm feeling like I'm getting the feeling that this is exactly where it is supposed to be. It is supposed to be right here. You have shared so very much. At this point, I usually say, and how can people find you? But we're not going to do that today. If you want to be connected with my friend Anna in some way, then go through me. I'll be your I'll be your agent. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how to contact me. I give you all that every week. So
Yeah.
contact me and I will, we may facilitate something. We may facilitate a conversation. Who knows what we could do going forward. But to respect her privacy and the privacy of her family and everything else, we're just going to leave it at that. But I hope that this conversation has helped
Yeah.
someone somewhere.
And if there is somebody out there who needs somebody to talk to about this situation and you're feeling really lost and you have nobody, definitely contact Sunny. I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you. It is very difficult, it is hard, and it's good to know that you're not alone. I of course I'm protecting the privacy of my family, but I can still have a conversation on some level.
Yeah, love it. All right. I love you, girl.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Talk to you again soon.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. How beautiful is she? I really do love her so much. Of course, we talked a little longer after the recording ended, and I was honestly curious about why people would ask if she's going to get her daughter back someday. That just didn't compute for me. And she said, well, a lot of times kinship adoptions can be set up that way, where it's not a formal adoption as much as a temporary custody arrangement during a time of hardship, for example. And then it made sense to me because I do know of situations like that. I mean, think about how many grandparents are raising their grandchildren and it may not be a full blown adoption through the courts. Okay. So, as a coach, I always encourage curiosity and questions. I often talk about doing that with yourself and your own thoughts. And I'm personally getting better at asking people tough questions coming from just myself as a person, not as a coach, like what Anna described here. She's fine with it. I'm always fine with it. Don't hold back on asking because you're worried about how it may be received. The more open and honest we can be with one another, the better place this world will be to exist in. I truly believe that. But I do want to help and remind everyone who is not personally connected to an adoption that it is very important to us to use the language of placed instead of given up. That's for the sake of the child. And I know words are just words, but kids are still figuring out those associations, and their little minds are forming meaning. It's a delicate dance for sure, one that we signed up for. We being any parent involved in the adoption process from every angle. And I can tell you from my own experience, no one gave up our son. A choice was made, a very difficult choice, which Anna described as intensely personal and unique. Very often, it is the third choice. But that is what it's all about, my friend. I want you to know that. Each of us has our own intensity and uniqueness. That is something to be celebrated. What a dull world this would be if everyone's story was exactly the same. I thank my beautiful friend for sharing hers with you today. As always, you'll find all of the ways to connect with me in the show notes. Until then, light up, shine on.